It is MLB First Pitch, and it is Tuesday, July the 23rd. And don't forget, we are live every weekday the rest of this summer and this baseball season, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific here on WagerTalk TV. I am Steve Merrill, filling in for Dan Alexander, but those Dan fans, don't you worry. He is behind the scenes right now producing, and he is taking all your questions and cutting them and sending them my way from YouTube TV here, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Live, TikTok, and X. You can watch us live on Twitter as well. Joined by two of the best baseball cappers at WagerTalk.com. In fact, Bryan Leonard is the best over the last 30 and 60 days. It's number one. You can't dispute with that. And also Adam Trigger right behind him. And we're going to talk about many of these games on the board for Tuesday night, boys. And Bryan, let me start with you. You know, we talked about the two teams that played four-game series out of the All-Star break were the two New York teams, the Mets and Yankees. Well, looky here. They're meeting each other now on Tuesday night. The Subway Series, probably the most high-profile series of the night. Let's start right off. Big game breakdown from Bryan Leonard for Mets and Yankees.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one after the Mets really played well against the Yankees in that big meeting there. And that was the turnaround of the Mets season. The Mets have been all good since. And the Yankees are a team that continues to struggle a little bit. You know, I always talk about the Yankees lineup, and they've got great hitters at the top and not much else. If you take a look at the StatCast for their team on Savant, you see red across the board, bright red for Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. And when you got to look at all the way down to Alex Verdugo's 257 expected batting average, which is slightly red. Everything else on this team is either white neutral or blue bad. And that's the problem for the Yankees, is they continue to struggle other than their two big bats there. Ben Rice has shown in the past that his short time in New York, he's done very well. And we're showing little glimpses, Grissom every once in a while. Austin Wells had a good day yesterday. But for overall, this Yankees team has struggled offensively. Actually, the Mets offense has been even better than the Yankees lately. Nemo, Martinez, and Lindor all having really good years. Alonso, not so much. That's a concern there. But I like the Yankees in this game coming back home. This is a game that they've been circling, a series that they've been circling. And Luis Heel on the mound. Take a look at his numbers. He's got red across the board. He's been very good all season long. The only weakness, and we saw this coming into the season, is his walk percentage. 11.7% walks, and that's what he's done his entire career, which makes his success this year even better because he's able to do that, putting all those extra runners on base. Quintana, he's had his time in Major League Baseball. He's been pretty good. He actually had a couple of good starts. In fact, he had a few good starts until his last time out. So Quintana's struggling. You see a lot of blue across the board on his StatCast page. I think the Yankees really bounce back in this game against Quintana. I will point out the Yankees against lefties are not as good as they are against righties. That is a concern. But I like the Yankees here. Hopefully they get the back of that bullpen straightened out, as they've struggled in that regard as of late. But big revenge game here for the Yankees. I think they get it done.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of us thought, the Rays might be a live dog yesterday because the Yankees' offense did not look very good on either Saturday or Sunday. But as you mentioned, Bryan, the Yankees broke out with 9 runs in that early game yesterday to maybe build a little momentum heading home. And Eric D. in the live chat is asking, where's the cat? He wants to hear the kitty roar. And of course, when you're playing a favorite, the cat does not chime in because the cat is a dog lover, which is so contradictory. Right. So we will probably hear the cat in a little bit because Bryan in general is a dog player, but he's on the favorite here in the Subway Series tonight between the Yankees and Mets. All right, Adam Trigger, I got to ask you about my Washington Nationals. Yes, sir, once again, my Washington Nationals, because they're playing some decent baseball this year. They've got some nice young talent. Currently 16 games behind Dan's Phillies, but they're only 4.5 out of the wild card, so I would say they're still alive. They were off yesterday, so we didn't get to talk about them much, but they're in action tonight against the Padres. And you look at the San Diego Padres, they're currently only a half game out of the wild card, second place in the NL West. So two teams that have something to play for here. How are you doing this one tonight, Washington and San Diego?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Steve. Your Washington Nationals, before they're your Washington Nationals, are my Rochester Red Wings up here. Not that I'm a fan of that team, but they're one of the teams that's in my area. I went to see them play on Sunday. They were actually down here in Syracuse. And a big reason that I'm high on this Nationals team relative to what the market expects them to be, is you kind of, made my point for me. They have a lot of young talent, and now they are going the route of kind of like they're the one team I think is going to be the trade deadline seller that's better off because they got rid of some of the guys in the way of some of these young guys. I just went to the game on Sunday. Dylan Cruz down there. I expect him to be up soon. He hit a bomb in the game I watched. It hit the ball hard, and he's just like, he's not going to be down there much longer. Let's put it that way. Just needs a spot to open up. But yeah, I talked about this on Friday on WagerTalk today, that the Nationals are a team that game in and game out are going to be looking to back, in the second half, and they came out and swept the Reds this weekend. So I think they're still very much in it, from being competitive in the wild card, but because they traded Hunter Harvey, they're probably going to move Winker and some of the other names that you'll see them in trade deadline deals. I think they're going to get watered down from an odds perspective, and that certainly was the case against the Reds. I believe they were an underdog in like every single game of that series, and even a little bit here. I think the market maybe has caught up, short term with them being favorite, with them being favored over the Padres here. But I still think that they're probably the right side. Now, the only reason this isn't going to be like a best bet client play for me, there's a couple of instances on today's board where I just like both teams. And I do like this Padres team. I think the Padres are another team that is likely much better in the second half than they were to close the first half as they get healthy. But we're talking this game on Tuesday night, and I think there's advantages here for the Nationals at home. The first advantage that I see is playing against Randy Vasquez. Now, I'm going to kind of contradict myself a little bit here, because I've said that Vasquez is starting to figure it out. If you've listened to our shows and we've brought up the Padres a bunch, I said Vasquez is a guy that's starting to figure out how to pitch at the big league level. The recent numbers support that, 2.21 ERA over his last 4 starts. But I think that this is a tough matchup in a bad spot. Now, the concerns with Vasquez for me, 1, his opponent batting average against 324. It's the highest in the big leagues. That's an obvious concern. 2, in 6 road starts this year, he has a 6.15 ERA. So that's concerning. And then probably the concern that's going to, not get detected here when you just kind of look at this game from the surface perspective is this Nats lineup has quite a bit of exposure against him. Now, if you just do a quick search and look at, the big league numbers, that might not show up. But Vasquez was in the Yankees organization. He pitched at Scranton for, a large period of time. And Scranton and Rochester play all the time. So the James Woods, Yepes was down at Rochester for a while, this year. And this is obviously going back to last year since Vasquez has been in the Padres organization since the Soto deal. But there's a lot of guys on in this Nationals lineup that have exposure to him. It just wasn't at the big league level. And that could help them out here as well. The starter on your screen said undecided. I think it's going to be DJ Hers for the Nationals. That would be appealing to me for a couple of reasons. 1, the Padres are a little bit worse against left-handed pitching. 2, Hers has an 11.8 K per 9 so far in, I think it's 7 big league starts. That's super impressive. I think his 5.17 ERA is probably a little bit harsh based on, how well he's thrown the ball. During his time up, he's kind of gone back and forth since being called up. He went back down to Rochester after a bad start. Now he's back up, but he's someone I think can definitely hang around at the big league level. And again, southpaw, Padres struggle a little bit more with left-handed pitching. So didn't get to the window laying minus 125, mostly because I still really like this Padres team. And the Padres had a day off yesterday, which means their top 2-3 bullpen arms are rested, and their top 2 or 3 bullpen arms are really, really good. But this seems like a good spot for the Nats. Maybe Nats first 5 to isolate Hers versus Vasquez. I lean Nationals here.
Yeah, so many correlations. You got Rochester, your local team. I've got the Norfolk Tides AAA as my local team, and they're, of course, the Orioles AAA team. And we've seen how the Orioles have turned things around after being one of the worst teams in baseball just 2 or 3 years ago. They might very well be the best team. So I'm hoping that happens to the Nationals as well. And yes, the Padres is where it all began, because that's where they got James Wood, they got CJ Abram, they got Mackenzie Gore. That was all in that Soto trade with the Padres, who's not even on the Padres anymore. So I kind of agree, Adam. I hope the Nationals are sellers for a little bit. And don't forget, Cruz was the number 2 overall draft pick last year out of LSU, right after another LSU guy, Brian Leonard, Paul Skeens. Maybe you've heard of him. He's a tall guy with a mustache. He likes Bob Uecker. But in all seriousness, Seth S. is saying, happy Paul Skeens Day, everybody, in the live chat. So I think we got to talk about the Cardinals and Pirates here, 6:40 Eastern. You know, Brian, we're going to look back probably in the near future. We can actually do it right now and say, man, we could have gotten Skeens at like pick'em underdog prices at one point a couple months ago. No longer, my friend. He's a $1.80 favorite. The Pirates are a $1.80 favorite tonight over St. Louis. But then again, are we really looking to fade Paul Skeens anytime soon? Brian, how are you playing this game, Cardinals-Pirates?
Well, being a man, the best part about Paul Skeens is his girlfriend. She's a little hottie. Yeah, Skeens has been everything we would expected and probably more. The guy's just been terrific all season long. A couple innings he struggled a little bit on the season, but you couldn't find a more consistent pitcher than Skeens has been this year. Really hasn't been blown out in any game. He hasn't had great stuff every game, but he's been able to pitch well. If he doesn't get injured, which is always a concern for guys that throw the ball as hard as Skeens does, this guy could have a hell of a career. And he's going up against the St. Louis offense that at times has struggled. Other times, you know, they've got some talent on this team, but they seem to be having a lot of guys having down years, all of us on the same year, obviously. First baseman for St. Louis is struggling. They've got some other guys struggling. They had some injuries, but they've got a few guys back as of late. Lance Lynn starting today for St. Louis, and St. Louis did something in the offseason that confused a lot of people. They brought in 3 new starters, 3 aging starters. Gray's been great, but Lynn's been pretty good. He's gotten bombed every once in a while, but he's given them good innings. He's done what Lance Lynn does. He goes deep into games, and he's been able to eat some innings for this team. So that's something you can always get something out of. But for this game here, I prefer Pittsburgh, but the problem you have with that is Skeens can't pitch the entire game. And that back of the bullpen in some instances has not pitched well. Other times they've been pretty good, which is pretty much it's just about any baseball's back end of their bullpen. So I prefer the Pittsburgh side, but they're pricing me out a little bit here. They got that victory late last night. I was happy for that. But, yeah, just enough here for me to put an opinion on Skeens. You'd like to play the first 5, but obviously that's even higher. Lean Pittsburgh, but not enough to make it a play for myself.
Yeah, Brian, that's the first thing I did was look at the first 5 also. To be honest, it's not as jacked as it's been in some other games. It's instead of minus 180 full game, it's minus 200. But obviously that's pretty juicy for you and me, especially as a dog lover. But that does make sense because Skeens is going to go at least 6. He is not going more than 7, folks, and that's almost a certainty. In fact, just his last start, I believe, it was one of his last recent starts, 7-inning no-hitter, and they still pulled him, right? He's been pulled twice this year, Adam, with no-hitters. His second start ever against the Cubs, 6-inning no-hitter. He's done, 99 pitches, 100 and some pitches the other game, 7 innings no-hitter. He's done. I mean, as a baseball fan and purist, that just drives me insane. But then again, I'm okay with it because watching Skeens has been pretty enjoyable. He's just been a phenom. Adam, I do want to get to another game. Do you have any closing thoughts? Chime away on this on the way in there. By the way, Daryl Benton said Skeens over 7.5 Ks. Definitely, there I do not disagree with that. Although he had no strikeouts in his last start. Of course, that was the All-Star game. He only went 1 inning. He did have 11 strikeouts in that 7-inning no-hitter against Milwaukee. 8 strikeouts or more, actually. Now, looking at it right now, he's had 8 strikeouts or more in like 6 of his last 7. The only time he didn't, he had 7 strikeouts. So over 7.5 strikeouts would have my blessing. That would be the only way I'd play that, Adam. Any thoughts on that? And then we'll look at something else.
Well, I'll hit 2 games here because I've got a point to make. So I'll give my closing thoughts and I'll tie it to another game. Okay. The Pirates with Skeens and the White Sox with Crochet on the mound are almost unplayable because Paul Skeens is a generational talent on what I still consider to be a sub 500 Pirates team. I know that everyone wants to make a case for the playoffs for the Pirates. This team's not going to the playoffs. I'm telling you that right now. They're not. This is not a playoff caliber baseball team. They're a below 500 team with a generational talent on the mound. So for that reason, you just can't lay minus 190 with the Pirates. And you already made the point, like, even when he's just absolutely flawless, he's still probably out 6th or 7th inning. If he does get blown up, which will probably happen at some point, it's likely going to be by a team in his division that's already seen him. So, like, I would be even more weary of, like, laying $2 with him against a team like the Cardinals or the Cubs or the Brewers that now have the opportunity to make an adjustment. I think he went deep, took a shutout into, like, the 8th inning against the Cardinals earlier this year. Now, I have no appetite to back Lance Lynn, but that's just my overall take on that game. White Sox Rangers, similar thought. It's like, there's no way I'm going to bet the White Sox at plus 115, plus 120 on the road against a Rangers team that's just so insanely superior to them. Am I dying to play against Garrett Crochet? Not really. I think I'd rather play against him than Skeens at this point. But the White Sox are just a bad baseball team. So, that's just, you're just paying too much of a premium, in my opinion, for the starting pitcher in both scenarios. I know there's ways you can get to the first 5 or maybe isolate more of the pitching. But this is another one. Like, the Rangers are going to start to get healthy. They're already starting to, they should start to play better. I thought they might have, won the series this weekend with the Orioles. I felt like it was, kind of like they needed to win that series, a little bit of a statement type series. And they had to win on Sunday to avoid the sweep. But the Rangers are a team that should be better. They're going to start getting guys back in. They're going to start getting healthy. So I can never play the White Sox here because I'm just paying too much of a premium with Crochet. So that's my thoughts on those two.
Yeah, no, I actually got to Crochet because that was going to be my question. I mean, Skeens and Crochet have been two of the phenom dominant starters, but there's such different type of starters, right? Because first of all, Crochet has been a converted reliever, and this is a guy that's now pitched more innings than he has pitched at any point in his career. So, big picture, Brian, I'll ask you just a big picture question here. Is like, trade deadline is looming in about a week, and there's a lot of talk about Crochet being dealt. I personally feel like he should be because I think you're selling at a high right here, and the White Sox need so much help. Let's use that analogy like the Orioles or the Nationals. Let's try to rebuild, get 2 or 3 guys for him. But, Brian, how much do you change your handicapping here over the next week with the trade deadline looming? Are there certain teams you're going to avoid, certain pitchers? I mean, a lot of us have been talking about the Blue Jays. It's always a red flag when a team has playoff aspirations, they underachieve. But any other teams jump out to you? Any other players that you'd be careful with here over the next week?
Yeah, we could be, placing a bet on a team, and all of a sudden they take them out of the lineup and get them ready to be traded. That's something you see all the time. And so you need to be a little bit careful this next week here before the trade deadline. And you mentioned Crochet. Not only should they trade him, they will trade him. They've already come out and said he's gone. In fact, anybody who has any type of breath is still breathing for the White Sox. They will probably be traded. You might even get guys that are playing for the White Sox. The Tommy Pham's going to be gone. They've got anybody who has any kind of life in the past will be traded and be a backup on some team. The White Sox are just looking to build. I just read an article today. The White Sox fighting off the worst record in history. Well, thanks to my Cleveland Spiders back in 1903 or something, they'll never get that. But this is a team right now who's actually come out and said that everybody's up for sale. And so it makes it tough to back those kind of teams going forward. And you mentioned the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are very similar in that regard. Washington, you guys talked about Washington a little bit. I think Washington does not need to sell at all. If they've got their minor leagues are so stacked. They're not as stacked as the Orioles, obviously, but they got a lot of good pitchers. They don't need to sell, but if they could sell and get another young person, especially another young arm in Washington, they could use that.
So, Brian, you're the dog whisperer. Your cat is the dog whisperer. So I got to ask you about this game because Tyler is saying the Royals getting plus money at home, something stinks. And Kansas City has exhibited a huge home-road dichotomy this year. They're a young team, so it kind of makes sense. Great home record, weaker road record. But Tyler wants to know if there's value with the Royals or if this is maybe a trap, if he's missing something here.
Well, Kansas City against lefties, and that's who they'll be facing today. Ranked 20th in Major League Baseball with a 95 WRC plus. That's 5% worse than league average. That is a concern. But you also have the situation for Kansas City, and I'll be honest with you, there were surprises in this last series for Kansas City at home, and I was on Kansas City a little bit, but the lines have been very high on the Royals, playing some pretty good ball right now. I think the All-Star game, they really gave them a little bit of a break, and they're playing some good ball right now. But Arizona is a quality team, no doubt about it, and they've got Montgomery on the mound here in today's start, but Montgomery has not been the same pitcher. Obviously, he was signed late, very much late in the season, so he didn't have much of a spring training. We're getting into the part of the season now where he should be at his best. We'll have to see if it happens here against this Kansas City offense. Alec Marsh has been up and down. He's probably been one of the weaker starters for the Royals on this season. Doesn't walk many, 7.6 walk percentage per game. So that's not bad, but you take a look at most of his advanced stats. Hard hit rate is high, 41.7, although Montgomery's is a 40.6. Neither one of them having that great of a season. I would prefer the over a little bit in this game. I talked about Kansas City not hitting lefties that well, where Kansas City plays in a ballpark at home where they're not, don't get many home runs. When they hit on the road, I know you do a lot of your road stats, and that tells you how good teams are. I prefer the over in this game than the sides, as we have two teams with a lot of good young players and pitchers who really have not gotten into their own this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Royals had some offense yesterday, a 10-4 home win against Arizona to start this series off yesterday on Monday. And don't look now, Adam, but you want to win a bar bet tonight because I know you love your bar bets. Who's got the third highest run differential in the American League? They're the best in the AL Central. They're plus 80 runs on the season, and that is third best behind only the Yankees and Orioles, yet they're only in third place in their own division. So by that metric, they should be 17 games above 500. They're currently 11, which is pretty good still. Give me your quick thoughts on this, but I want to ask you about a bigger game tonight. Other than that Subway Series, I think Giants-Dodgers one of the bigger games tonight. So if you have any thoughts on the Royals, chime in, but also want to get your thoughts on Giants and Dodgers tonight, the late night special.
Yeah, I kind of teased it when I was breaking down Padres Nationals. This is another game where I love both of these teams. So it's difficult for me to play one way or the other because I think Arizona is arguably, I think they might be the most underrated team in terms of like what their record is right now to what their record, like expected record or what their record should be or what I think it should be. So I think Arizona is very, very underrated. But at the same time, all of those things that you pointed out with the Royals, I agree with. I still think the Royals might win this division. I talked about this on the radio with the BetMGM guys on Sunday. We talked about Alec Marsh really quick. I think he desperately needed the All-Star break. I think he was getting a little bit fatigued. He should be better than he was like the last 6 weeks of the first half. So to me here, like I don't want to play against either of these teams, but the lefty splits definitely like are a little bit glaring there. Like I think I'd give Arizona like the slightest of nods here, but I like both of these teams too much to make a bet against either right now.
What are your thoughts on this Giants-Dodgers game, Adam? Because this was a series last night in which you could say both teams were in letdown spot, right? The Dodgers were coming off the Sunday night ESPN win against the Red Sox, but they stayed at home. But then the Giants were in what I consider a very under-the-radar letdown spot, and that was coming off Coors Field in the altitude. Ralph Michaels pointed that out to me earlier this year, I think during an NBA show. He said in all sports, fading teams off the Nuggets, off the Broncos, off the Rockies. All those teams have negative win expectations for several years now, and it's something I think really goes under the radar. So the Giants lose 3-2 last night. They meet again this evening. Any thoughts on this Dodgers-Giants game?
It's basically it's basically my thought on every Dodgers game, it seems like, where this is almost an impossible team to bet, to handicap, because they have this great lineup and they're essentially running out a AAA pitching staff at this point. And it just becomes really difficult to pick the right spots. Like I would have thought the Red Sox would have had some success against them this weekend. The way that those games lined up and the way that those games the matchups sort of like were on paper, and the Dodgers swept that series. And the Dodgers swept that series because they hit 9 home runs in over the course of like 3 games. So the Giants are they're just an inferior team to the Dodgers. Like I felt like I was a little bit lucky to cash with the Giants on Sunday. I played him with Birdsong on the mound to avoid the sweep against the Rockies. They were able to do that, but they really needed every bit of his 12 strikeout performance and then their top relief guys to do so. So, like, I lean Dodgers just because I think they're a much better team, but I'm not sure that I want to lay $1.40 with Knack, who's, again, another one of these guys that's probably in this rotation because the likes of Kershaw, May, Glasnow, Bueller. I mean, they have a whole like all-star rotation of guys that have been injured either all season or are still hurt. So it makes the Dodgers really tough to handicap, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like the Dodgers could be a play-on-team big picture here in the second half. I mean, they've been one of the best teams in baseball, but you feel like they've almost underachieved, right? Because there's all this talk of 110 wins, before the season started and whatnot.
Well, that's what I mean, Steve. You're getting $1.35, $1.40 here to play against the Giants and Hicks with the Dodgers. Like, that's certainly appealing, right? Like, that's like Dodgers at home -140. The Giants are probably a sub 500 baseball team. So you made a great point. Like, they're kind of like almost, the prices against the Red Sox all weekend. There was a lot of games in that. There was games in that series where it looked like the Red Sox should be favored, and you could basically get the Dodgers at like, -105 at home. So yeah, you're 100% right with that. There's very playable prices on this Dodgers team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all thought when the season began, at this point of the season, we'd be laying like -300 every day with the Dodgers in every game, because so it is, you put it in big picture like that. And also, by the way, their run differential +96 is the 3rd best in baseball. It's even ahead of the Orioles right now. So this is a really good team that you feel like it's kind of sleeping and getting disrespected at 60-41 on the season. Bryan, speaking of the Orioles, we've been getting some great questions from the live chat here on YouTube on WagerTalk TV. But don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube Shorts if you're on the go. And Kyle Mushafin, Dan's got to pronounce that one for me. No, Kyle is asking, did we go over the O's game yet? And we have not. So let's talk about my Baltimore Orioles. They were once upon a time. Like, growing up, we didn't have the Nationals. They were my Orioles for decades. So I'm definitely getting behind them again. When James Wood came up, Bryan, I looked at the prospect list. He was listed as 3rd in the top 20 a couple weeks ago. 3 of the guys in the top 20, including the number 1 overall prospect, were all at AAA Norfolk. That's how good this Orioles team is going to be, not only this year, for years to come. Don't know if they're buyers or sellers. I think they'll be kind of neutral here at the trade deadline. I hope they are, because I think they have enough talent to win it right now. Miami Marlins, though, man, you talk about a team that's underachieved this year. They make the playoffs last year with a negative run differential. They have regressed as expected, maybe more so. Bryan, any thoughts on this Orioles-Marlins game tonight at 6:40 Eastern?
One final comment about the Royals. I went and looked. They've got the 2nd most wins at home in Major League Baseball behind the Phillies. So their home field has been very strong for them this year, which is another reason to take a look at them if you don't mind laying the prices. And today it's a situation where you don't have to do that. So kind of lean with that. Baltimore is the situation where they've got guys, Suarez going today, who may be his last start for Baltimore if they can get some of these trades done that they're trying to do. They've got a couple guys that have struggled a little bit, and Suarez is probably the weakest link out of the starters for Baltimore. Miami's going with Tyler, I guess. So they've gone very deep in their minor league system also. And there was all this talk about the Dodgers. You guys just finished on. That's one of the deepest starting rotation going back to the minors in Major League Baseball. They brought a guy up yesterday, Rivers, and he did great. So the Dodgers have great coaching. They have money to spend. Unfortunately, I heard Yamamoto still is not ready to pitch. Who knows when he's going to be back? But Kershaw, I believe, is going to be pitching on Thursday, which is good. But his velocity has been really down in his tune-up in the minors. So But if there's anybody that knows how to pitch without velocity, that's Kershaw. It'll be interesting to see him pitch there. But Baltimore with Suarez on the mound, not one of their better pitchers. But the situation I'm looking at is this Marlins team, as you pointed out. I had them yesterday. That was one of my few losses yesterday. But Baltimore, from an offensive standpoint, just totally overwhelms Miami. Miami's Berger's starting to wake up a little bit. Sanchez has been pretty consistent. Chisholm's been very good, but he may be traded any day this week. And De La Cruz is another guy playing well. But Baltimore offensively is so much better than Miami. That would be the side I would look at here. The problem is you've got to play, 150, 155 or whatever on the road at Miami. But I think that's a fair number for Baltimore. I prefer their bullpen for the most part. If I had to play it and it's not on my card, I would take a look at Baltimore here. Miami, I've given Miami many chances, especially at home, and they continue to struggle. It may be just a wasted season for Miami fans, and there's not many of them.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about there's always a couple teams each year that toss the towel. I think it's a vastly overused adage in sports, especially professional sports, but it normally is a team that had bigger aspirations or had a playoff season the year before. They're vastly underachieving. I've referenced the Blue Jays earlier, a team they might want to be careful with here over the next week near the trade deadline. And the Marlins kind of fit that profile as well after overachieving last year. Eric D., Tyler, in the live chat on YouTube here on WagerTalk TV are saying, how have we not talked about the Phillies yet? Well, that's the whole point here, man. I keep you hanging till near the end of the show. So we'll get to Phillies Twins in a moment, but I'm going to cross Dan up even. See, look at that. Even he's got the finger on the trigger waiting for that Phillies game. But we got to go in order here. We got to go in order, man. We had someone in the YouTube shorts, another question from Scott Chafee asking about the Angels game. So, Adam, I want to get your thoughts real quick on Angels and Mariners. Seattle quietly, has been having a nice season. But then again, if you look at that old run differential, are they perhaps a phony team? They are plus 14. The Astros are now plus 48, and they are now tied with Seattle for first place. Kind of feel like maybe the Astros are climbing and the Mariners are starting to regress. But what are your thoughts specifically on this Angels-Mariners game tonight, Adam?
Yeah, I would agree with the Mariners. The Mariners don't hit. That's the problem with the Mariners is their pitching is really, really good. Like top to bottom, pitching depth. Like they have a rotation that is like if they got in the playoffs, I'd be worried about having to face that rotation. The problem is they just don't hit. And and for whatever reason, it's like the prices are always so inflated on the Mariners. I find myself being unable to play the Mariners because I'm almost instantly not willing to lay $1.70 with a team that can't really hit. So even if you feel like you have an advantage, Gilbert, Soriano, better team, home team, whatever, there's just no shot I'm laying $1.70 there. Now I'll throw this one to Bryan. I have more of an opinion on the Phillies Twins. I don't know if that's what you wanted to talk about, but I don't have much of an opinion because I can't lay $1.70 with the Mariners. At the same time, I'm just not dying to play the Angels right now, who certainly feel like that's a team that I feel like is really starting to throw in the towel in terms of like an effort standpoint.
Yeah, Bryan, I love something Adam said. I mentioned that on the show this weekend on Sports Grid, is that the Mariners are going to be a more dangerous playoff team than they will in the regular season because pitching is so important, in my opinion, especially the top 2 or 3. You don't need a 5-man rotation in the postseason. And Seattle's, for most of the year, they've had one of the top 5 starting ERAs. I saw a stat also last week, Bryan, that was very interesting. Percent of fastballs thrown. They showed the top 5 pitchers in all of baseball that throw fastballs more than anybody. 3 of the top 4 were Mariners, which I thought was really strange. It's almost like maybe the rest of the league is going to catch on to that here. So, let me know your thoughts on this one, and then we'll start off Twins-Phillies. I'm going to give you both a chance to hit that game since it's definitely the game of the night, according to our live chat.
I think you need to break down Seattle home games and road games. I've talked in the past about the hitting in Seattle. It's not just Seattle. The opposition doesn't hit well in Seattle, which is what makes their starters look so good. I gave them a shot yesterday, and they still couldn't score and end up losing that game to 3-1 to the Angels. Hats off to the Angels. They don't have many guys on this team that could play for any other squad, but they continue to play hard all season long. I've been somewhat impressed by the Angels, even though they don't have major talent. They give you a good game just about each and every day. Gilbert's on the mound, obviously a better pitcher than Soriano, but Soriano's one of these guys that if you take a look at his advanced stats, he's not a bad pitcher. And you're getting him here in the plus 145 range. Seattle's a better team, but this isn't the same Seattle team we saw earlier in the season. They're really slumping right now. And after playing Houston and losing 2 or 3 there, that wasn't good. Then they lose again last night in a game that they were winning. I don't want any part of Seattle here. The confidence is very low on this team. If I played this one, I play the Angels. And it would probably be, obviously the line set at 7. It's probably going to be another low-scoring game because it's just a tough building to hit in for both teams. So maybe Seattle runs under, maybe something we take a look at in this one. I don't play a lot of that, but I think Soriano's going to have a pretty good game against this lineup.
Yeah, obviously their unders have been money at Seattle. They don't hit well, and it's a pitcher-friendly park. It's something, but it's factored in the line. That's why we see a lot of 7s once again, like we saw this weekend against Houston. All right, we got a couple minutes remaining before we get to best bets from both of these guys. 2 other games we have not talked about, but quickly on the way out, a couple minutes each, guys. I'll start with you, Adam. Twins, Phillies, and then Bryan, I'll get your closing thoughts on this as well, because Dan Alexander, our producer, is dying to know what he does with this game tonight. He doesn't just blindly play the Phillies. He's looking to fade them when the opportunity is right. Is that the opportunity tonight, Trig?
Unfortunately, no. I had this circled. So I had Twins plus 1.5 circled for this spot. I was really hoping the Phillies would have won and won convincingly last night because I think this plus 1.5 opened in like the minus 125 range. I think a Phillies win might have caused it to, have some action the other way and got it down to where I could play it. But also it would have made it a better spot. So now Twins at plus 1.5, minus 135, not as appealing. But I love Simeon Woods Richardson. My most recent 5%er in MLB was his final start of the first half in a game that, he didn't pitch he didn't pitch great, but he pitched good enough for the Twins to win. He's someone that the reason I like him so much is he's 23, but he's on his 3rd professional organization. He was a guy that was supposed to go to Texas, the University of Texas, ended up getting drafted way higher than he thought he was going to, decided to take the pro contract. The Mets gave up on him. The Jays gave up on him. The Twins took him, and then in the offseason, they decided to sort of mess with his pitching mechanics, change his arm slot, and he was getting mixed results with it down at AAA earlier this season, but it seems like he's figured it out. I just love the way he's throwing the ball now, and I was really hoping to get the right spot to back him here. Obviously, we would be going against Wheeler, so I would want the 1.5. So I don't have a play. I'll let Bryan kind of finish it up and see if he has a play, but I think Woods Richardson could fool the Phillies a little bit. They have 0 exposure to him. And again, he's been throwing the ball awesome since he's really figured out how to sort of throw out of this new arm slot. So he's a play-on guy for me right now.
Yeah, and Bryan, we keep saying the Phillies are due to regress at some point. They're a really good team. They got some of the best starting pitchers in baseball. We see that All-Star game. They got 3 of the 4 starters on the infield. They're a loaded team on both sides. But you do wonder maybe after that All-Star break with so many guys involved, if there's a little regression. They did lose 7-2 last night to Minnesota after playing Pittsburgh during the weekend. What are your thoughts on the Phillies in this game or maybe big picture going forward?
Good point about the amount of players that are in the All-Star game. Take a look at Cleveland. Cleveland had 5 players in the All-Star game, and look at their offense since they've come back. I've never done any research on it, haven't seen any research on it, but that's something to take a look at. Just touch a couple other things. Kansas City, great point by the viewer who talked about Arizona being the road favorite, and it was strange. Kansas City is not favored in that game. And look at all the money coming in on the Cincinnati Reds. They put Martinez as their starter today, and the lines moved. South Point had Atlanta at $2.40 before. Now they're down to $2. Nick Martinez, that good? I don't know. A lot of strange money coming in on Cincinnati in that game. Maybe it's because Atlanta's not hitting here. But Philadelphia, because they're so good at home, I have to take a look at ways to play against them on the road. But Minnesota's pretty good ball club. They've dealt with a lot of injuries offensively all season long. But I would have to think that Minnesota's got some value on this as the home dog here, catching them in the 130 range, 125, 130 here against Wheeler. I don't like to go against Wheeler. He's obviously one of the best pitchers in baseball. But as Trig pointed out, Woods Richardson he's not been terrific, but he's been very serviceable. Every time he gets on the mound, they seem to win. I would play Minnesota if I had to play that game.
Yeah, I mean, the Twins are having a pretty nice season. It's not like they're a shabby team here. I mentioned earlier that they are ahead of Kansas City despite not having the same run differential. They're still plus 47 on the season, and they're in second place in the AL Central. So that's one of the better games tonight. Dan Alexander's Philadelphia Phillies against somebody's Minnesota Twins. All right, guys, best bet time. And Adam, and I'm going to start with you because you want to talk about this Reds and Braves game. And Bryan just mentioned that the line is dropping. What are you doing with Reds and Braves, and what else do you have going on at WagerTalk.com?
Yeah, well, what I was doing when the camera cut to me and saw me on my phone was not texting my friends. I was actually entering the Reds plus 1.5 as a play. So now I have a 4% play up on the site for sale. I'm 31-12. My last 43 best bet. So hopefully we can keep that going. And you're going to get the second one for free because I was waiting for the Reds to announce a pitcher. And as Bryan pointed out, it's going to be Nick Martinez. That's one I can stomach, and it'll be part of my breakdown here in a second. So Reds plus 1.5, not only my best bet for the show, but also a 4% client play for me tonight. So it's going to start off as a fade of the Braves. Chris Sale, he leads the Major League Baseball with 13 wins. I guess my overall first point to make is I certainly didn't see this Chris Sale resurgence coming. He's second in the National League with a 2.70 ERA. He's second in WHIP, 0.93. 140 strikeouts, which is third. He's allowed 2 or fewer runs in 7 straight starts. I don't really have an issue with Sale, but he is now pitching for what I consider to be a Braves team that is far, far worse than the market has them priced. And I'm going to go into why a little bit here. This lineup is horrific. The lineup the Braves are putting out now on a nightly basis is so much worse than I feel like is even being like talked about. When I listen to even, people that follow the Braves talk about the Braves or people that cover Major League Baseball talk about the Braves. Like, it's not pointed out enough how bad this lineup is or how bad they've been. You've got key contributors like Matt Olson is like 1 for his last 35. I think he's in an 0 for 17 slump. The bottom of the order has become, it's like Duvall, Rosario, Murphy, Arcia. It's just like, that's not what you expect the Braves to have like 6 through 9. And it gets worse, right? Like, they might be without Austin Riley. I think his wife was in labor last night. So he left the game. I don't know if he'll be there tonight. Now you're going to potentially take Riley out of the lineup, or he's going to roll back in on no sleep. That's not ideal either. They went out and got Whit Merrifield, who hurt his finger taking a ground ball. So he's probably not even going to play tonight. I saw they called up Nacho Alvarez as a nice prospect, but he was at Double-A. Up until a couple weeks ago. He came up to AAA, was okay, and suddenly he's making his Major League debut yesterday at a position he hasn't played since like high school. He didn't play a single game at second base in the minors, and he started at second base last night. So, I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a mess here that I just don't think it's being talked about at all because, it's the Braves and, whatever, like they'll figure it out because it's the Braves, but I don't know how that lineup really figures it out, and I certainly don't think that they should be a $2 favorite or whatever they were a few minutes ago, minus 240, against a team the caliber of the Cincinnati Reds, who are still a very competitive baseball team. As far as Nick Martinez is concerned, I like him in the spot start role. He's a guy that I came into the season higher on than most. He went to Japan. I felt like he really sort of remade himself there. He came back to be a very, kind of a serviceable big league starter. And then he struggled out of the gate this year and sort of pitched his way out of the rotation. He's been much better since being put in the bullpen, and I think spot starting still counts. Like, I don't mind him in the spot start role. I wouldn't want him back in the rotation at this point, but like on a one-off scenario where he's going to make sort of a one-off start, I think it's fine. Like, I'm willing to back him here. So Reds plus 1.5. I just see two very even teams. If you can weather the storm with Sale and you're in the game, then plus 1.5 becomes a very good bet. So that's going to be a 4% play for me. Cincinnati Reds plus 1.5 client play for me tonight.
This is a free play who's an actual client play from a guy that's on a 31-12 run. If that's not reason enough to watch these shows, I don't know what is. And maybe not a bad reason to give the show a thumbs up like right now if you're watching. And also don't forget, click subscribe and hit the bell as well. Adam Trigger, I forgot you have a bell. I need to find a bell. Adam loves bells. Brian's cat loves bells. Lots of bells. But click that bell for instant alerts so you never miss when the shows go live. We go live at 11 a.m. Eastern. And by the way, Wager Talk Today, right around the corner. We'll be back at noon Eastern here right after this show with Wager Talk Today, Teddy and the Prez. And, oh, by the way, I'll be a guest today. So I'll give you a couple free baseball plays on Wager Talk Today for myself, Steve Merrill, in just about 15 minutes. But, Brian, on the way out here, I want to talk about the Red Sox and Rockies, your best bet for the show. You know, it was a tough spot for Boston yesterday. They had to come in off the Sunday night loss to the Dodgers on ESPN. They got down 4-0. They tied it up 4-4. Game went into extra innings 5-5. The total was 10, and it was 5-5 after 9. Ends up 17 runs because with the new extra inning runs rules, you know, runs can happen. Colorado, anyway, won 9-8. So very curious to see what you think happens in the game tonight. Red Sox, Rockies. Red Sox are the better team. Rockies, though, have that altitude and home field advantage. How do you think it plays out?
I just want to point out, great job by Trig breaking down this Atlanta offense. 100% agree. Most overrated offense in Major League Baseball right now. Great job by Trig. Just want to talk about what I've got going today. I've got a 5% play today. I've only hit 3 of them all season long. 3-0 on those 5% plays. 29, 7, and 1 on all of our plays graded 3% or higher. So we've done very well on our best bets. I do have that big 5% play up for today. You can grab that, but we've got a lot of extended specials, football, baseball, all around to save a lot of money. So if you're looking for the big play today, grab that or an extended service from anybody. Great specials out there right now. I wanted to talk about this one because I had Colorado and then ended up getting that victory yesterday. We talk about Colorado I talked about Seattle earlier, looking at them home and away. You got to look at Colorado the same way. Colorado on the road, I want no part of Colorado. They've been bad for decades on the road, whereas at home, they're very competitive. Teams come in there, they think they're going to have an easy time against Colorado. It's totally different. And the one thing I really like in this game here is Cooper Criswell. He's got some pretty good numbers on the season for Boston, but he's not a fastball thrower. You take a look at his pitches, and they don't really have anything classified as a fastball. Well, I've talked in the past about Boston's pitching staff this year getting away from fastballs, throwing more off-speed pitches, sweepers, curveballs, everything else staying away from the fastball. That hurts them in Colorado. Colorado, with the altitude, anybody who throws off-speed pitches, you don't get the same break in Colorado that you do in any other city. So your curveball may move a certain way everywhere else. It's not going to move the same variance as it does here in Colorado. And that's going to give these Colorado bats an advantage in this series because Boston is not looking to throw fastballs. So I think this works out great. This is the perfect series for Colorado playing against Boston here. Criswell doesn't have a fastball, so everything he throws is off speed. I think he's going to really struggle against Colorado here. I use Colorado as my play in this game. I'm not a big Ty Block fan. He's not a very good pitcher, so it would not surprise me if Boston scores some runs either. I think, even though I said that Colorado would be my best bet here, I think Colorado team total is probably the better play in this game because I think they'll hit around Criswell and this Boston pitching staff that is not throwing fastballs. And like I said, in this environment, you're not getting the same break on these off-speed pitches. I think Colorado has a really good offensive game today. Play Colorado in the game, but I like the Colorado team total over as even a better play.
Yeah, I like it, Brian. In fact, the Wager Talk live odds screen as we're doing this show live right now is lighting up to the over, now 11 over 15, but you can still get the Rockies team total at 4.5. So you got a total of 11 for the game. You can get the home team at just 4.5. Makes a lot of sense. So Brian Leonard Some great information there. And by the way, he's number one the last 30 and 60 days combined in baseball at WagerTalk.com. All right, Wager Talk today is around the corner in less than 10 minutes, the Prez and Teddy. But I know it's not a Prez free zone, but it's safe to watch because I will be the second guest today, just in case things get out of hand. So be sure to chime in for more baseball free plays. Jesse Schul, myself, Steve Merrill. And who else do we have today on Wager Talk today? We've got Ronald Kabang. He's actually talking baseball also. Ronald Sneaky. He does baseball along with that WNBA. So check out Wager Talk today. Hit subscribe, hit the bell for instant alerts. And don't forget, right now, this week only, get the rest of baseball for free. We just gave you a ton of free games here on the show, but how would you like to get the rest of the baseball season through the World Series for free? All of our official best bets. You can do it for every capper on the site right now with no promo code needed, whether it's Adam Trigger, Bryan Leonard, myself, Steve Merrill, anybody else at WagerTalk.com. You buy the football early bird for $7.77. That gets you both college and pro football, every play, every day through the Super Bowl in February. And oh, by the way, you get the next 3 months plus of baseball for free. That's over a $400 value. So once again, you get football for $7.77. You get the rest of baseball over a $400 value for free. If you want just NFL or just college, the price is even less, and you can add baseball for just $99. No promo codes needed. Check it out right now. Every capper, WagerTalk.com. Thanks for watching. Comment in the comments below on the replay. We do read the comments and reply back. And stay tuned. Wager Talk today coming up in about 5 minutes.